Hello everybody, welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today we're doing a review of the brand new film Gran Turismo, which has technically been out in some countries for at least a couple of weeks now, but is now finally available, opened just tonight here in the States. There were some previews that had happened, some fan event previews that had happened about a week or two ago as well, but it is finally now a wide release. I was able to see this at my local theater on the Big D format, and yes, I wish I was making up that name for the formatting of my local AMC's big screen, but hey, there's what it is right now. And I got a lot of thoughts on this movie, mostly very good thoughts, this new film by Neil Blomkamp, and let's go ahead and dive into it, though. Before going further, make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button, and smash the rumble button as well. Also, make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification. That way, you know every time a video live stream goes live on the channel. All right, let's talk about Gran Turismo. As I said, new film by Neil Blomkamp. For those that have not followed his career, he had a really strong start with a film called District 9, came out about 2009 or so. Everyone thought, or anyone who saw the movie thought, oh man, this guy is something special. This guy is going to be able to make quite a splash. And he's just never really been able to get the ball rolling, right? He had that fantastic film, still stands up. He had, especially when you look at the budget of that movie, in today's dollars versus how much money is being wasted by studios like Warner Brothers and Disney, he was able to do so many amazing things with the visual effects in that film, and it also was just a solid movie to boot. You then go on to his next films like Elysium and Chappie, and though I am, again, a fan of his style when it comes to how he films action and just kind of the eye that he has for certain shots and the eye that he has for framing, or at least working with cinematographers very well to be able to create some very powerful moments on screen, those stories just really did not match up. Now, I know that this was, again, something that was on my radar kind of early on, because when I was looking ahead last year into what was coming out for 2023, I came across this and I thought to myself, you know what? This is a video game movie. I have no real interest, until I recognized the name Neil Blomkamp. I said, wait a minute, this is a Neil Blomkamp movie? Okay, this is not just going to be your run-of-the-mill video game film. And sure enough, I can say that. This is not your run-of-the-mill film. Now, is it a revolutionary movie? Is it going to be, changing the game, as it were? Is it going to be a film that's remembered for years to come? No, I don't think this is a District 9. He has not been able to match that. But is this film more entertaining and a little bit more well-polished in many respects versus other films like other films like Elysium and Chappie? I would have to say yes. This is a movie that I could see myself watching again. There's a lot of really great tension-building moments. It kind of reminds me a little bit, and I know that there are some who have made this comparison, that it's almost the Ford v Ferrari of this year. Personally, I think Ford v Ferrari is a much better film, just as the overall quality of the movie, and also some of the tension-building too. But this also has some very, very well done, very well built tension moments, especially with the vast majority, or at least seemingly the vast majority of the shots in these cars taking place being practical, using actual drivers. The fact that this is based off of a true story, which is just kind of insane to think about, right? That there is an actual person who played this game and then was able to actually become a legit driver based solely on the experience that he had playing a video game. It's one of those things you oftentimes think about of, if I'm this good at this game, could I ever actually do this in real life? And in most instances, with most, occupations and whatever the game might be, you would say, probably not. And yet, this guy, the film that the story that this movie is based on, was able to do it. Now, did they probably take some creative difference or, some creative control of the movie and decide to do typically what, anytime you have a based on true events film, right, what happens? They take liberties with the story. I'm sure that has happened, and I've heard some people say that. I don't know enough about the original story to be able to pinpoint when those moments are, but what I can say is that going into this mostly blind, never having played Gran Turismo, not really being interested in cars, I kind of have a similar experience with this movie as I did with Ford v Ferrari, where it made me appreciate it. It made me appreciate racing a lot more. I'm not a NASCAR person. I'm not anyone that follows just any other type of racing. Formula One, whatever it might be. And yet, it's always great when there's movies like this that are able to kind of reach out, right? Reach out and bring people in who are not necessarily a part of that universe or have not necessarily an interest in that universe. And ultimately, it comes down to a bunch of key factors for a movie like this, especially, right? I've talked about Ford v Ferrari enough, I think, at this point. But Neil Blomkamp, I think, is kind of the first thing you have to talk about. He is a very competent director. He knows how to work, especially within a budget. He knows also how to be able to create some very interesting images and to work very, very well with all of the different technical people that are a part of it. Now, that being said, this this is also where I get into one of my nitpicks of the movie, which is I don't think the cinematography is as great as it could have been. There's some really great shots in the film. It looks like they probably used some kind of drones when they were getting some of these sweeping shots of these amazing, races and these racetracks and all these other things, the crowds and everything was pretty cool. But there's a lot of shaky cam. There is a lot of handheld shaky cam, and even though it's not the most egregious shaky cam that I've ever seen, I think about movies like Pig, where there's just no reason for that film with Nicolas Cage to have as much shaky cam, or also in a more like mainstream setting. If you look at the shaky cam in the forest sequence in one of the last Harry Potter movies, it just was so jarring. It's just so almost sickening. Ambulance is probably another film more recently that I can think about that came out in the last few years where that movie honestly just felt like you were about to be sick. Luckily, it doesn't have that kind of shake to it, but it is still enough to where I'm like, okay, we get it. This is the kind of style you're going for. But there is, I think, too much. I think that there is a limit to how much an audience can take of that, or at least for people like me, at least. And I think that probably detracts from the film just a little bit. There's some beautiful sequences in this movie, as I said, whether it be the drone shots or just some of the other ways in which these shots are framed, especially using these practical effects, getting the cameras inside the cars. That is awesome. However, again, I think that is something that is going to detract from it is just those visual elements. But other than those, again, visual miscues that I think do exist in this movie, I think Neil Blomkamp works pretty much very, very well with every other person, really across the board. Then you have to get into the actual cast itself. So this guy, Archie, who plays the character of Jan in the film, I think he's great. I've never seen him before. I've never heard of him before. I'm sure that he's been in maybe some things, but ultimately I have to give some shout outs to him because I thought he did a great job. He is the lead of this movie, and even though you have much bigger characters, much bigger actors, people like David Harbour and Orlando Bloom, amongst others, I think that he is still able to do quite a good job of holding his own and really taking ownership of the fact that this is a movie about him, right? This is a movie that is about the character that he is playing, and kudos to him for being able to really pull it off very, very well. Now, he does have a great supporting cast. David Harbour's in here. Orlando Bloom's in there. I think that they are also both great at what they are doing. Orlando Bloom kind of plays this marketing guy. It's all his idea. There's a couple of moments in the movie where he's not a bad guy by any means, but he is definitely not the best person. He's a businessman, so he's going to be, making those kinds of decisions. But David Harbour is honestly really the kind of the heart of the movie because he is a former racer. He's been working pit for 15 years. He has no faith whatsoever in this guy. He has no faith whatsoever in any of these sim racers, as they're called, because they're only simulating, they've only raced in simulations before. And to see the journey that he goes on from just completely against to learning a little bit more to almost becoming this father-like figure. And that's been talked about a lot about him and the character played by Archie as well, that again, there's this father-son dynamic that's kind of playing out, which is again, a very rare thing, it seems, in modern day movies. You don't see that a lot. And when you have that, I was honestly worried when I kept hearing about that was going to somehow maybe detract away from the actual father in the movie, who is played brilliantly by Djimon Hounsou. If you've never seen Djimon Hounsou before at anything, I love this guy, honestly, even in some of the worst movies that he's ever been in. Because again, he's been in a ton of Marvel films, for instance, and let's just be honest, those films in many cases have just not been good. He, however, has been fantastic in them. He has done everything that he could with what he was given, but he brings it in this movie. And I'm happy to say that just because David Harbour has a little bit more of this familial bond and the relationship between them has a little bit more time spent on it, it doesn't mean that Djimon Hounsou's character is just completely left by the wayside. It is not in any way like demonized, and I think that is, a really, really good choice that they made, whether it be the actual real life story. It looked like, based on the pictures at the very end of the movie, that they probably had a pretty good relationship, or at the very least that they were close. But still, it was nice to see that. You don't really see that in a lot of modern day movies. The rest of the supporting cast also, I think, did a great job. If I had to talk about any other elements of the film that I really enjoyed, I would say the race sequences, for sure. They're able to really do a good job of combining together a couple different elements. For instance, they're able to combine together things like the actual race cars, but also having these digital overlays where you look at it and it's almost as if you're in a video game. So you see what place the person's in. You have all these features, which I'm assuming are in Gran Turismo, right? There's certain sequences, transitions that happen, which I didn't get, went over my head. So I'm assuming that they're probably from Gran Turismo, but it's a very good job of blending those elements together. And I think that it works very well. That all being said, as I mentioned, with cinematography being one of the issues, I think the pacing and the editing is also an area where this film falls a little bit short, or at least, again, could be a lot tighter. I don't think this film needed to be nearly as long as it was, and I think ultimately it comes down to that editing. There was a lot of this fast cut, fast-paced editing, which again, it makes sense within the framework. It's a racing movie. That's kind of what you would expect, similar to other films, like, for instance, the one that comes to mind is like Whiplash, where there's a lot of just, again, because it's a jazz, the editing is based in a lot of ways on a jazz rhythm. This film has that too, but again, kind of on a racing rhythm. But when you have that shaky cam, that's always a tricky thing. When you do quick edits, quick cuts with shaky cam, it doesn't always work out. And I think in this movie, it definitely suffers from that from time to time. Overall, though, I think that this movie is quite enjoyable. I had several moments in the movie where I was, not necessarily on the edge of my seat as I've been with other films, but I was definitely invested, and I definitely felt the emotions of the character. There's some very, very good arcs, especially for the main character, and I think that ultimately it's going to leave a lot of people very satisfied. It leads and ends rather on a very positive note, or at the very least I could say on a kind of hope. And we just have so many dour, sad movies today that I think this is the kind of movie that people enjoy. So I think if you like cars, you probably love this movie. There's a lot of car stuff in here that probably went well over my head. If you like Neil Blomkamp in general, if you've liked, not just District 9, but maybe you thought that, Chappie and Elysium were okay, or you even enjoyed them, I think you're going to enjoy this movie too. He continues to be able to produce quality, and I think that this is probably the better one of the movies he's made since District 9. He's still not been able to match that film, but he still did a great job with it nonetheless. And so if I had to give this film a grade, I think I'm going to go ahead and lean towards a B+. I think probably leaning more towards the B. And the reason why I'm not, necessarily going to the A territory with the movie is, as I said, I think that there are definitely some technical elements that for me kind of took away from the movie. I think that the movie is good. I don't think the movie is phenomenal. I don't think this is the kind of film that's going to ever be on my top films of all time list, but it is a film I enjoyed. It is a film where if I find out more about these, behind the scenes, maybe this would be something that I would eventually own on physical media, but it's not one of my, I gotta have it, right? It's not like a Top Gun Maverick where it's like, I gotta have that film on physical media. This film was fun. It was good, but I really, again, part of me, and maybe it's a bias that I have, just when it comes to shaky cam and when it comes to quick, fast-paced editing, mixed together with all that, it was, again, at times distracting. But luckily, you got all these other elements working for it. Didn't even talk about the score. The score is also very good and very effective. And I think the visual effects that are used in the movie end up being pretty good as well. But those are my thoughts on the film. Have you seen Gran Turismo? Do you have any desire to go see it? I think it's a darn good time. And based on everything that's currently out at the theaters, I would say go watch it. Right now, it's only projected to make around 17.4 million domestic. So it is expected to take the #1 spot. And Barbie is expected to take the #2 spot again, with Blue Beetle kind of falling off the map a little bit. But hey, I think that this is a movie that's worth seeing in theaters. I think that you'll have a good time with it. And if you're a fan of any of those other elements, whether it be Gran Turismo, Neil Blomkamp, or just racing films in general, hey, you might have a lot better time than I did. Still, enjoyed myself quite a bit, and it was a lot of fun. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you like the video, smash that like button. Like the front of my eyes, smash the rumble button as well. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. And now for a special shout out to all of my members at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above, starting off first with my members over on Patreon: Father Luca Illich, Heimir Irie Hymason, Garrett Searles, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Orange Chat Reviews, check out his YouTube channel by the same name, Laura, the Monomator General's Story, Rosetta Allen, check out her YouTube channel, Eagle Rider, and Miss Martin Muses, check out her YouTube channel by the same name as well. To my subscribe star peeps, Zion Voders, Matt317, check out his Twitch channel by the same name, Fast Reaction, The R, Mr. Roy, J-Rod, The Beer Guru, and ZK Man, who you can check out over at xtheboundaries.co. And lastly, to my locals members, Miss Minnesota Hockey Fan, How About a Hockey Player, J.H. Schwalbach, and Robert Barnes, the amazing lawyer. So thank y'all very much for being my supporters at the Keep of the Bifrost level and above. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, go ahead and check out that top link in the video description below to find out ways to sign up to support the channel and to be able to get access to things like the shoutouts, but also to giveaways. I have an exclusive giveaways channel on my Discord server where I give away 4Ks, Blu-rays, all kinds of stuff, and also access to an exclusive podcast that I do once or twice a month, depending on what I'm able to get accomplished, especially over the course of this crazy, crazy busy summer. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.